Okay, this is Mr. Clemmons, and we're here to talk about the APUSH timeline for the early republic and everything. I can tell you right quick, you need to highlight the first 2 pages of the chart, front and back, okay? 1 page, front and back. And you have the Treaty of Paris officially ratified after being signed the previous year. But when it comes to some of the big stuff, okay, I'm just going to point out a few things on that page you just absolutely have to know. May 25th, the Constitutional Convention opens in Philadelphia. Then in June, and they call for a revision of the Articles of Confederation. However, this will actually not be considered until 1787. And then in June, James Madison publishes a memorial remonstrance against religious assessments, advocating the separation of church and state. Right there at the bottom, June of 1785. Okay. Also, July 13th, on the top of the next page, the Land Ordinance of 1785 is passed, providing for the division of the Northwest Territories into soundship with lots to be sold for $640 each. And then the first Treaty of Hopewell with the Cherokee people. In September 1786, you have Shays' Rebellion. Again, highlight the whole thing on the first pages, but you got to know Shays' Rebellion. Then 1787, Congress agrees to hold a Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia to deal with weaknesses in the Articles. May through September, the Constitutional Convention meets and results in the creation of the U.S. Constitution. It needs to be ratified by 9 of the 13 states to get ratified. In July, the Northwest Ordinance was enacted by Congress, including policies creating new states, accelerated westward expansion, fundamental rights of citizens. Arthur St. Clair is made the first governor of the Northwest Territory. And then after the Constitutional Convention finishes the Constitution, a series of 77 essays, the Federalist Papers, are published in the New York's Independent Journal. They're written to persuade individuals of each state to ratify the Constitution. By the end of the year, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey ratify the Constitution itself. Okay? Now, a goodly bit, almost all of that next page is highlighted too. Know about, though, for sure, Washington inaugurated president, the Judiciary Act of 1789, and the Tariff Act of 1789 are two that should be absolutely highlighted. Then you have 1789, Congress submits the Bill of Rights for ratification. And in 1790, Hamilton submits his reports on public credit, outlines his financial program concerning assumption of state debts. 1791, the Bank of the United States is created. 1791, Hamilton submits his report on manufactures, calls for high tariffs, federal aid for public works, and projects to promote U.S. industry. Also that year, Congress passes the whiskey tax on recommendation of Hamilton, and the Bill of Rights in 1791 is ratified by the states. Then you have the Neutrality Proclamation in the war between Britain and France, the Citizen Genet Affair, please highlight that, the Whiskey Rebellion in Pennsylvania in 1794, Jay's Treaty with Britain, Pinckney's Treaty with Spain, Washington's farewell address, beware of entangling alliances. Then you have Alien Sedition Act passed by Congress, Kentucky and Virginia Resolves drafted by Thomas Jefferson, James Madison. This is protesting the Alien and Sedition Acts. And then the election in 1800, which is tied between Burr and Jefferson, and it goes to the Congress to decide, and Jefferson becomes president. And then that's fixed by the 12th Amendment in 1804. Then over the next page, 1801, John Marshall, a Federalist, is nominated Chief Justice of the Supreme Court by John Adams. Then you have the case of the Midnight Justices, also in 1801. 1802, actually 1801, Jefferson's inaugurated as president, Burr vice president. That date's wrong. 1802, excise duties are abolished by Congress. The Naturalization Act of 1798 is nullified. The big thing here is Marbury versus Madison, 1803 Supreme Court case. You'll want to know that. You want to know the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. And in 1804, the Lewis and Clark Expedition. It starts westward expansion. Then 1805, Napoleonic Wars continue to disrupt commercial shipping. 1806, down to the first Non-Importation Act passed by Congress, forbids importation from England of enumerated items, becomes effective in 1807. 1806, ban on all slave importation to the U.S. become effective January 1, 1808, as prescribed by the original Constitution to allow the slave trade 20 more years. 1807, the Leopard Chesapeake affair. British ship Leopard tries to stop the U.S. Chesapeake off the coast of Virginia. Make sure to highlight that. 1807, Robert Fulton's steamboat, the Clermont, travels from New York City to Albany up the Hudson River. 1807, first Non-Importation Act becomes effective but fails to get anything done. 1807, the big thing here, the Embargo Act, you gotta know that. Then 1809, the New England Conventions to nullify the embargo happened. 1809, of course, Mr. Clemmons' favorite act, the Non-Intercourse Act, signed by President Jefferson. James Madison inaugurated as president, George Clinton vice president. Then in 1810, Macon's Bill number 2 reopens trade with Britain and France, stipulates you can restore non-intercourse with either nation without interference. 1810 midterm elections alter Congress by bringing in the War Hawks. Then 1812, Madison asked for a declaration of war against Great Britain. By the way, below that, it's where it says James Monroe, it should be James Madison is inaugurated for a second term in 1813. And then the Hartford Convention of 1814, where people are secretly in the New England area thinking of seceding from the Union. Then 1814, at the end in December, Treaty of Ghent ends the war. But in the Battle of New Orleans, that should be 1815. That date's wrong too. 1815, Battle of New Orleans. And the Treaty of Ghent unanimously ratified for the Senate after the Battle of New Orleans. 1816, the Second Bank of the U.S. is established. Then Erie Canal Project is launched in 1817. Dartmouth College versus Woodward. Now, these big Supreme Court cases are important to know. Dartmouth College versus Woodward, the Adams-O'Neill Treaty, 1819. McCullough versus Maryland, 1819. 1823, the Monroe Doctrine. That's very big. Supreme Court case 1824, Gibbons versus Ogden. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Marshall rules a monopoly granted by the U.S. State Legislature, New York Legislature, was invalid. Okay. So that brings us to the end of that time period. Now, if you all have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me about that. Thank you very much for your time today.